If you're dealing with foot and Achilles pain, and maybe you've tried stretching, maybe you've tried insoles in your shoes, or maybe you've tried rest, in this video we're actually going to explain why none of those things are working and actually give you some real advice that's going to help fix your injury in the long term, but also just help improve your performance and longevity by improving your mobility, your strength and your confidence. So let's jump into these questions. I've got 10 questions from Instagram mainly and some from WhatsApp as well that people have messaged me. So first one, why does Achilles and foot pain keep coming back even after I've been resting or stretching? So let's break this down into two parts. Achilles pain is going to be slightly different from foot pain because the Achilles, if you don't know, is that tendon on the just above your heel that almost attaches into your calf, whereas obviously your foot is your foot. And these two structures are slightly different because if it's an Achilles issue, the Achilles is a tendon, whereas obviously the foot is a collection of bones and other structures. So let's start with the Achilles. With the Achilles, if you've been resting it or you've been stretching it, why aren't these two things working? Well, number one, with tendons, in this case the Achilles tendon, usually people get pain at a tendon because it's been overloaded. So tendons and muscles grow at different rates. So muscles grow a lot more quickly than tendons. And so when people get Achilles pain, usually it's because they've started to do an activity that involves a lot of Achilles loading, such as running, but they've gone back to doing a lot of running very, very quickly, and therefore the tendon is incredibly overloaded, but all the other muscles and everything else in that complex, let's call it, around the foot and the Achilles, isn't prepared yet. So if you just rest or stretch your Achilles, stretching isn't going to do anything because it's not changing the load on the Achilles, and resting isn't going to do anything because it's having the opposite effect and you're not loading the Achilles at all. So you want to find a middle ground where we're loading the Achilles a little bit, and alongside that we're also doing some rehab work where we're looking to improve movement at the foot and the ankle and the Achilles, and improve some strength at your calves and just your general lower limb, how that functions all together when you want to get back to running. If we're specifically looking at the foot is obviously a collection of lots of different things. It's not a tendon, so to speak, but really it's quite a similar issue here. With foot pain, it can be an overload thing. So again, you're doing something that involves a lot of loading at the foot, such as running, walking, and you've started doing that very, very quickly. Or sometimes it can be a mobility and a movement issue. And a lot of the time it's more likely to be this. So resting isn't fixing that because obviously it's not improving your foot mobility and just getting everything moving. If we've got a stiff foot, we need to make it less stiff. And stretching will give you some short-term pain relief for the foot, but it's not going to fix the underlying issue, which is actually getting your foot to move how it should do in gait, which is how we are designed to walk and run. That's the first question. A little bit long on that, I do apologise. What are the most common mistakes people make when trying to fix foot or Achilles pain? I think the biggest mistake people make is, from what I see, is number one, everyone does calf raises for Achilles pain, and some people get really good results with that, other people don't. I think the main mistake there is a lot of people just aren't loading their calf raises heavy enough. So you'll see people do calf raises for 15, 20, even 30 reps, whereas if you actually think about how much force the calf can produce, you need to be training it in a much lower rep range. So usually once I can get rid of Achilles pain with isometric holds, with a calf raise where we're just holding one position, then I will load them up quite heavy on the calf raises. Usually one straight knee calf raise a week, 3 sets of 4 to 5 reps, and then a bent knee calf raise once a week, 3 sets of 4 to 5 reps, working really, really hard. And that's actually going to train the calf and grow it properly instead of training it in an ultra high rep range. And the same thing applies to any other muscle group in the legs, but we just, for some reason, we do ultra high reps with calves where we shouldn't be. Where we don't, obviously, if you're doing like heavy quad extensions, heavy squats, heavy deadlifts for quads, hamstrings, glutes, we do a much lower rep range, which we should be doing for the calves. That's probably the biggest mistake I see people make when trying to fix foot or Achilles pain. How can I, number 3, how can I tell if my Achilles is inflamed, my tendon is the issue, or just tight? So usually with the Achilles, it is a tendon issue. It's not really inflamed or it's not tight. The tendon is designed to react and absorb load, obviously, as you're hitting the ground, and then it'll react as a kind of byproduct of that. And so usually it's a tendon issue at the Achilles. And as I spoke about with question 1, it's a case of gradually backing off the activity that was aggravating it, so decreasing your running volume and improving mobility, how the foot interacts with the ground, and a lot of calf and lower body strength. Do shoes, insoles, or orthotics really help? So no, in my experience, especially in the long term, they can actually do a lot more harm than good. And the reason for this is because if you've been to get your running gait analysed, like a running shoe shop with one of those machines, then they'll either tell you that you're like over supinating, you're over pronating, and then in order to compensate that, you'll get a shoe with some insoles in that will almost like just keep your foot in one position. So for example, if you've got very, very flat feet, what they'll do is they'll give you an arch to kind of like create an artificial arch to make you have less flat feet. The reason this isn't great is because the foot is just designed to move into these different positions. So no position is good or bad. So like if someone has flat feet, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would just coach that person to be able to supinate, which is to create more of an arch, and then pronate, which is to close that arch. So to be able to access both positions instead of just shoving a orthotic in there and keeping them in one position, because that'll just create a very, very stiff foot. A great example is, imagine at your knee, if you could only, you were never allowed to fully straighten your knee. It would get quite sore, it'd get quite irritable because you're not taking it through its full range of motion. And really orthotics are just preventing that at the foot. So yeah, that's what I would say to that. Number 5, what are simple tests I can do at home to assess my foot and Achilles strength or mobility? Good question. So the first one you can do is just a simple straight leg calf raise, single leg straight leg calf raise from the floor with wall support. So just support the wall with your hands, straight leg, just moving up and down, single leg calf raise, and aim to see if you can do 30 reps on each side. That's always a good benchmark, obviously pain free. That's quite a nice little capacity test you can use with people, and you can compare side to side. Another good one you can do is a calf bridge. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to explain on here, but I'll do my best. So you lie on your back, you have your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor, and then you gently tuck your pelvis so your lower back is flat into the floor. You lift your hips half a centimetre off the floor, and then once you've done that, then you lift your heels credit card distance off the floor, and then you hold this position. So in this position, your calves will be working like really, really hard. Then you can try to take one leg off and hold that for as long as possible, and work up to try doing like 30 to 45 seconds on each side. So that's a calf bridge, and that can be another nice one. Which exercises actually help and which make Achilles pain worse? So as I was talking about, I think high rep calf raises can actually make your Achilles pain worse because they can just irritate it and they're not actually getting the calf strong enough. Stretching can also irritate the Achilles because it's not reducing the load on it and it's not building strength in the area. And yeah, those are the main two I would say make it worse. Ones that actually help, I've already mentioned there. Heavy calf training when you're able to tolerate it. Before that, it would just be heavy isometrics. So with a calf raise, if you get imagine this is a barbell, sorry, not a barbell, a plate, and then you'd have your heel just hanging off. So you'd have half your foot on, half it off, and then an isometric would just be holding in this position for 45 seconds with a heavy weight. So loading the calf isometrically, and then once you can tolerate that, then moving into heavy calf raises. Other things that are going to help, learning to supinate and pronate your foot. So learning to essentially go from heel pressure to midfoot pressure and learn to close and open arches at the foot. They're the big ones. How long does it take to see improvement if I start the right program? I'd say most people who I work with who've got foot and Achilles pain, you start to see improvements after 3 weeks, maybe even a little bit earlier. Obviously, this is massively dependent on the injury and how long you've been dealing with the issue. If you've been dealing with Achilles pain for 4 or 5 years and you've had ongoing Achilles issues before that, then obviously the whole rehab process might be a lot longer. But if your Achilles has just flared up and it's only been 2-3 weeks, then we might only be working together, or I would only be working with someone for kind of maybe 8 to 10 weeks. Can I train and lift weights while rehabbing my Achilles/foot? Do I need to stop completely? So in terms of lower body stuff, you can still do a lot of single leg work. You can obviously still do a lot of hip hinging for your glutes. You can still do a lot of hamstring work. And then obviously the other thing you'll be doing is calf raises when you can tolerate that in terms of heavy weights, and maybe some plyometrics as well further down the line. So yeah, I don't think weights is a bad thing. I would just incorporate it into the program. And outside of your specific Achilles rehab, single leg work, you can't go wrong with Bulgarian split squats for like a single leg exercise, short split squats, lunge clocks, curtsy lunges, hip hinges, single leg hamstring curls. All these things on machines are really, really good to just build general lower body strength. Why do some people improve quickly while others struggle for months? So I think I answered this question, how long does it take to see improvement? I think it's the same question. So realistically, it just depends on the person, their beliefs around their injury, their previous injury history, how strong and mobile they are, and how many different problems they have. So it's a never-ending question, really. So some people will improve it much more quickly because they haven't been dealing with the pain for that long. They haven't had as many previous injuries, and generally their beliefs around their foot and Achilles pain are quite positive, and they feel like they can fix it, and they bought into your treatment plan as a physio coach, whatever that is. Someone that might be a lot more challenging is if they've been struggling with it for 5 years with Achilles pain, and they think that massage and stretching is going to fix their Achilles pain. So that person will be a lot harder to get going, and they might struggle for a longer period of time because it might take them longer to buy into your process about building up strength around the Achilles and also reducing the load of that painful activity, which is again usually running, walking, jumping. What's the number one daily habit or drill that makes the biggest difference for Achilles and foot pain? A really good question, actually. I would probably say a pronation drill, pronation and supination drill. So learning to open your arch and learning to close your arch as you bend your knee. So if you think about that your arch should be open as your knee is straight, and then as you bend your knee or try to push your knee forward almost to the middle of your foot or nearly over your toes, then you should be closing your arch. Understanding this foot pressure is just going to help massively in terms of getting all the right muscles working, and it will translate really well to better running as well. So that's probably the number one daily habit because it requires a few minutes a day, and it's probably going to make the biggest difference. Check out my other YouTube videos because I have got videos on the specific pronation drill, because obviously I can only describe it here and can't run through